Selene woke at 6:11 for the 11,903rd time. Tonight, the world hummed differently. Tonight, if he did not arrive, this dawn would be the last dawn she would ever know. Listen close. A single remembered moment can bend the sky. She lived inside a single breath. Pale pink hair like a memory of sunrise. Eyes layered like cut sky glass, always finding the same window. A dress that was mostly white, edged in silver marks she could not read. Outside, a town folded itself into familiar kindnesses. People who smiled and recycled the same sentences. They were kind and merciful, and they did not remember new things not truly. When Selene asked about a boy with black hair and dark blue eyes, they offered the kindest answer they had. There is no boy. It must be a dream. The veil had taught them what to say. The veil made the world polite enough to forget. She would walk every day to the field of pale lily petals suspended above earth as if the ground had given up its memory. She would place a hand on a lily, and for a breath, a shape would come back to her, feeling warm, certain, like a fold of clothing left to keep you company. And then the day folded closed, and she woke anew at 6:11. Beyond the edges of that gentle prison, Kalen opened his eyes into falling time. He was lumen-born as she was creatures breeded from first light. Once they had studied worlds together. Once they had promised small truths to one another. He had tried to change a fate he should not have touched. To save a world that was ending, he broke a thing that could not be remade. The universe punished him with absence, reincarnation, erasure, forgetting. Selene had bargained for him. She traded her future for his return, a dawn that would repeat if it would let him walk free. But she could not remember why she had chosen to be bound. She could not remember the bargain she had offered. Kalen remembered. That remembrance ate him and kept him alive. It pushed him through lives that did not hold his name for long, until memory remembered him enough to pull him toward the field. He carried with him not only longing, but small treasures, echoes of true care. Because when two lumen-born cherish one another, the imprint they leave is deeper than fate. Listen, some things are harder to erase than laws. A kindness given without counting the cost settles into bone. A hand held when the world trembles becomes a native place for the heart. Those are the memories the veil cannot smooth away completely. So Kalen did not dare storm the loop. He did not shout her name across collapsing skies. He mapped the shape of her care and left it, softly, like breadcrumbs made of light. First, pale pink flowers, not for beauty, but because once, when the skies tore, he tucked one behind her ear and said, "Small things keep us." That moment had steadied her breath more than any shield. Second, a blue handkerchief, not to show him, but because once, when he was defeated, she wrapped his trembling fingers with that cloth and whispered, "Even stars stumble." He had kept that cloth and later returned it as an anchor. Third, a melody, a tiny lullaby he had hummed between repairs of fragile worlds. She had hummed it back without knowing why. It was a pattern that made her bones remember steadiness. And lastly, the silver ring. Not a spectacle of romance, but an honest token of promise exchanged quietly on a night when their duties left them small, humble, and human. An anchor of intent. I will find you. Each item was not a clue. Each item was a pressure on the heart. Remember the tenderness that mattered. Memory made of care resists unmaking. If you're still with me, listen. The next part is where the universe chooses whether to keep its rule or to change it. This is the dawn that behaved like a different thing. She woke and the hush in her chest had a shape of loose thread tugging toward a name she could not finish. At the field, she found a single lily cradling a silver ring that did not vanish when she blinked. She lifted it. The metal was warm. The memory of it came was not words, but a slow returning of weight, a promise made not in theater, but in the quiet of shared repair. She breathed, and the first syllable formed, "See." The veil flinched. For the first time, it could not smooth the edges fast enough. At the far edge of the field, he stood, black hair catching the fractured light, coat stitched with the map of constellations he had walked through. His eyes were the color of gathered deep sky. He had reached this loop earlier than any before. He called her name without force. not to command memory, but to hold a still place while the heart repaired. "Selene," he said, soft as the thread of dawn. "You remembered?" She still could not see him fully, only pieces. The tilt of a shoulder, the memory of warmth. But the rain kept her tethered. The handkerchief tucked into a windowsill she had never left now felt like a knot in her sleeve. The world noticed. A tremor of static ran through the town. The veil hissed like a closing door. There was a cost the universe had never spoken aloud. If this attempt failed, something would not return. Not only would she be rebound, but the bargain's erasure would deepen until there was nothing left to recall at all. This dawn could be her final one. They had only minutes. 3 minutes, measured not on a clock, but in the slow collapse of petals. 3 minutes where the things he placed must do their work. He stepped closer enough that she could see the blue of the handkerchief peeking from his coat, a shade she could feel before she named it. He hummed the melody barely louder than breath. It landed like a key in a lock, memory uncoiled. She saw a night of work, hands stained with ash and constellations, and his hand offering a pink bloom while the sky broke. She saw him stumble, and she wrapped his fingers in blue cloth and spoke when there was nothing left to say. She saw 2 small, tired people promising to keep one another from being alone. The veil's hold weakened. Around them, the town blinked and hustled, not knowing to look up or why the lily leaned toward the sky. 2 minutes left. Her eyes met his fully for the first time. Dark blue to layered blue. He had carried the weight of forgetting and still walked toward her. 1 minute left. The loop tried to slam shut. Images began to smear at the edges of thought. She felt the universe take a breath to bind one more reset. She reached for the promise ring on the lily. The metal was warm. The name of him rose whole in her mouth. "Kaylin," she said, not a whisper, but an unmoored truth. The world held. When their fingers met, it was not fireworks. It was the slow, certain thing that stitches wood to wood. Their time bond remembered itself through the smallest seam of care. The ring was not magic alone. It was the seal of repeated tenderness. The handkerchief was not a token, but a history of steadiness. The flowers were not pretty, they were proof of presence. Light unrolled outward. The veil unraveled like thread pulled from a cloth. The field exhaled. Lily sank and rooted into real soil for the first time. The horizon rewrote its appointed line. Selene leaned into him, and for the first time, the weight on her chest eased. She said, with the quiet of someone who had slept for centuries and now woke, "You kept the things we made together." He laughed softly, a small, exhausted sound. "I kept us safe in small ways," he said. "Because when the world forgets, small things remember." He bowed his head, and the universe knitted its wound closed, not because care was stronger than forgetting. Sometimes the universe waits for the moment you're finally seen, because being seen is the first step to being free. Not because you suddenly became larger than your fear, but because a single recognition, tender, true, can untangle what once bound you. Selene stepped into a dawn that had never been hers before. Kaylin stood beside her, tired and whole. The world would later remember small miracles, though none of them could name the cost. If you are moving through a day that repeats itself, or if you feel unnoticed in a small, ordinary way, know this. The thing that tends your heart, the steady, careful things, will often be the key. Sleep now, let the quiet do its work. And when morning comes, look for the small things that make you feel held. Until the next quiet night, good night, dreamer.